Hey guys, it's Bren. Welcome to my second channel, my vlog channel. Check out my intro video if you haven't and you're a little out of context because that'll kind of explain what I'm doing here. But I kind of made a list of all the different things that I wanted to talk about on this channel and the different stories that I wanted to tell. And I was trying to figure out what order do I put them in, you know, what's going to come first. And I thought it might make sense to kind of start off with a brief or not so brief, I don't know, I'm pretty long-winded, history of just kind of my love life, I guess, and the relationships that I've been in, just to kind of put everything in context, I suppose, lay a foundation for the future videos where I talk about this story and that story. So here goes. I've always been more of a long-term relationship type of person. My first boyfriend was in 9th grade. We dated for a year and a half. So that kind of set the tone for everything. I remember having some other friends, particularly back in high school, that really just liked dating around and they always wanted that new love buzz. And I had this one friend, like every time she got a boyfriend, they would date for like a week and then she'd dump him because she was on to the next. That was not me at all. I really liked and still like the familiarity and comfort of a long-term relationship. And in particular, I think I like having that one like go-to person that you can tell everything to. After my first boyfriend, I had another guy that I dated at the end of high school, kind of on and off, but he was my high school sweetheart, I guess you could say. We went to both junior and senior prom together. And then I went off to college and I had a really bad experience my freshman year of college. So when you go off to college and you live in a dorm, you generally make friends with all the people that you live with. That's your first peer group. And I made really good friends with these two guys who lived down the hall. I started for a while dating one of their friends from back home who would come visit, but it didn't really work out. Meanwhile, there was this really strong attraction between me and one of the guys I lived with, but he had a girlfriend back home who was still in high school, so he wouldn't fully commit to me, but we had this very heavy flirtation going on. And it eventually got to the point where his friends were telling me, hey, you gotta give this guy an ultimatum. He's got her back home, he's got you at school, like he's playing you guys, you know, and I just really liked him a lot and I wasn't trying to be like the other woman or anything. Like I just liked him. And anyway, I did take his friend's advice and tell him, hey, this isn't right. You know, I would like to date you. You have a girlfriend back home. You need to make a decision. And he told me that he was going to dump her and date me. And then one night, I remember everybody on the floor, we all went out for ice cream. But he stayed back to break up with his girlfriend. And I got back thinking that he was going to have dumped her. And then he and I could be together. But instead, he told me that he just couldn't bear to break up with her. And he loved her. And so he told her that he cheated on her once. But like, really, he and I had been like, we had something going on for a long time. I don't know. But that he couldn't hang out with me anymore and he couldn't see me anymore because, you know, he wanted to make it work with her. And what sucked about that the most was that all the guys on my dorm floor were rushing the same fraternity. And so pledge brothers, they're going to stick together through whatever. So like none of them would hang out with me anymore either. And they were all like, we're really sorry, but you know, we got to go with him. And what it was just a stupid mess. And I kind of lost my core peer group right away in college because of that. And I started hanging out with another friend of mine from high school who lived in a different dorm, and one of his friends wanted to date me, and I don't know that I was super into that guy. He was very nice and we had like a good friendship, but I was very lonely and I ended up dating that guy for like a year, I think, just because like we were good friends, but there wasn't a whole lot of chemistry going on. And when that ended, I dated around for a very short period of time where I had like a true college experience of like going to parties and like meeting guys. Like I didn't have very much of that at all when I was young. And then I met my ex-husband online. And it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't because we were on like a dating site or anything. It was a band's message board that we met on. And he lived in Atlanta and I lived in the Chicago, like outside of Chicago. 700 miles away from each other, but we just really hit it off. I remember talking to him all day on AOL Messenger to date myself. And just like he made me laugh, he seemed perfect, he seemed great. And some friends and I, sophomore year of college, took a road trip down to see him, to meet him. And we decided when I met him that we wanted to try to be together. But then there was this whole Romeo-Juliet thing where his parents forbade it. And even though he was an adult who lived on his own, he worked for his family business. And they literally told him, well, we're going to fire you if you see this. Because they just saw like that I was some crazy girl from Chicago on the internet and whatever. They were also very religious and like this whole like she's from the devil thing came into it, which it got really weird. But I just really liked him. I don't know. For me, it was like this romantic love story. But he told me that he couldn't see me anymore, because of that. Months passed. I didn't really date anyone seriously then. But then I started talking to that guy online again. And this time he was like, screw my parents. I love you. We're going to be together. And I went down to see him again in Atlanta. And while I was there, he sat on the edge of the bed with me and called his mom and told his mom, hey, I quit. And remember that girl from Chicago? She's here and I'm moving up there. And it really was crazy. I mean, it was the stuff of movies. It felt like that. It was an epic love story. It was dramatic and crazy and all of that. I got all of that when I was 20. And the thing is, the movie would have stopped there. The book, whatever, that's where it would have ended, running off into the sunset. But what actually happened was he moved to Chicago and with his large dog, a boxer named Bronx, who was a puppy at the time, no job, and he lived in the crappiest little apartment that was like above a family's house because it was the only place that would rent to him with a dog and no job. And then he started working just like in accounts payable somewhere while I was finishing up school. And during that time, we fought a lot. We screamed at each other. I mean, we would have broken up in any other circumstance, but because he moved 700 miles away for me and like quit his family business for me, we stayed together. Things got better though. We pushed through that hard time, and once I graduated, I got a job and I was able to actually like get us a nice place to live in while he went back to school. And then we got engaged and we planned the whole wedding. We got another dog, Roxy, my golden retriever, and we very much were that couple who was like obsessed with our dogs and they were our children and everything. And then he graduated college and we moved to the suburbs of Chicago. We were both working. We were planning the wedding. Everything was good. I was 25 when we got married. And then I was 27 when we got divorced. In that time, in that couple of years, a few things happened. I think when I got married, I never questioned that he wasn't the person I was supposed to be with. There was never a time, like I said, he moved up there for me. Like there was never a time where it even seemed like a possibility to break up. I never considered it. But I think looking back, he was a really good friend. We were really good roommates. We got along great. We co-parented our dogs. Great. But a huge part of our relationship was our dogs. And then Bronx died. And I don't know how to put this without sounding insensitive, but we grieved very differently. We treated the whole thing with Bronx very differently. When he got sick, my ex didn't want to treat him. I'm not going to waste money on a dog that's going to die anyway. And I paid for everything out of my own pocket, even though it was his dog. He pulled away from the dog, stopped loving the dog, stopped bonding with the dog. That was his way of coping with the death before the dog had even died. I overcompensated by loving the dog extra. When the dog actually died, I was upset. And I remember like the day after he died, like crying and my ex being like, you knew he was going to die. But that's the kind of guy my ex was. He pushed his feelings down. He didn't want to let himself feel them. When I cried about the dog dying, it made him feel stuff. So he got mad about it. So I ended up hiding in the bathroom crying because my baby had died. And it very much made us grow apart. And on a very minor scale, I'm not trying to say that having a dog is the same as having a kid at all. But on a very minor scale, it let me understand why sometimes couples, if they have like a child who dies, they do not stay together. Because I can kind of see how that, like if you grieve differently, you just grow apart and how that happens. And it wasn't just the dog dying. There were a lot of other things where my ex, he was kind of cocky. He was very conceited. He was like this Republican banker. Once he got his degree and got a good job, he just got all these friends who were bankers and their wives and girlfriends. I tried really hard to get along with them, but they were just different types of people than me. I'm very down to earth, and they were very much the, tanning, fake nails. All they talk about is their hair appointments and all that kind of people that I just couldn't find common ground with. I tried. And he was just absorbed in that world. And I had always felt like there was something from my life that had been lacking, where at the same time that he had those friends from work, he wasn't a very social guy at all. Didn't like to go out, didn't like to party. He would say things like, I don't need friends, I have friends. I see people at work. I don't need to go out. He liked to play video games a lot. One of those, right? I would have to like beg him to put down the video game controller and go to the grocery store with me on Saturdays because that was literally the only thing we did together. And I felt like I had taken the last 2 years of my college life, and it's like almost like I had wasted the first couple of years of college on that jerk who lived with me, and then that relationship that I was in where there wasn't a whole lot of chemistry. He was just nice and I was lonely. And then the second 2 years of college, I was working my butt off trying to make it work with this guy who had moved 700 miles from me, and we started living like we were 40 when we were 20. I had like never been to a bar. I was like 25. I'd never like ordered a drink. I'd never gone to a club, and I had people that I knew, like that I worked with and stuff, who were like living the typical 20-something life, and I wasn't. And I was a little unhappy about that. I was unhappy about the fact that I didn't have a lot of friends and I didn't have a large peer group, and I felt like I was missing out on my youth. And I would try to tell my ex-husband this, and he just didn't get it. He would just be like, you need to go see a therapist. Sounds like, I don't know, very insensitive. Every time I was sick, he would tell me it was all in my head. When I started getting heart palpitations, he was convinced it was in my head. It's not. I had testing done. I wore a monitor. I've been on a 10 wall for 10 years now because of it. It's not in my head. It's a thing that I have. But you ask him, he'd tell you it was in my head. And I just didn't feel like he loved me. I really didn't. And then I had a friend. So the dog died. My heart thing started. We were really growing apart. And I had one of my best friends from high school back home was getting divorced. Her husband had like cheated on her and left, like the whole thing. But I started hanging out with her again. And I started going back to my hometown to hang out with her and people that I had known from high school. Not necessarily the best characters. Some of those people were pretty crappy. And looking back, they were not like good people, but they partied, they went to bars, they lived a 20-something life, and all of a sudden I started to see, here is this avenue that I could take to get to all those things that I thought I was missing out on. And I had a lot of fun when I went back to my hometown and hung out with this friend, and we had a lot of fun, and I always invited my ex-husband, but he was a snot, and he would be like, I don't want to go hang out. What am I going to do? Sit around and drink Bud Light with your friends from Rockford? Like, he was just so stuck up sometimes. I mean, there were very good things about him. There were reasons that I fell in love with him initially, talking online for all those nights. We had the same taste in music. And he was one of those guys that everybody liked him at first because he like filled up the room with his personality. But he was also just very conceited and I don't know. I always felt like I was alone when I was with him. You know what I mean? He didn't really get me. I never felt like. But we started to grow apart. I started hanging out with my friends from back home. He started hanging out more with his banker friends or just playing video games, whatever. And eventually it was just like we were going to go home to Atlanta for a Christmas, and the flight got delayed. And in the time it took for the flight got delayed, we made the decision that I wasn't going to go with. And instead we called our families and told them, and I ended up going home to my families and staying there for the next couple of years. And we had a very amicable divorce. We did not have lawyers, nothing. I probably got screwed totally because, see, I'm very independent. Financially independent. It was drilled into me as a kid. My mom didn't work, and so she always told my sister and I, like, don't ever be like me. Don't put yourself in that position. Your dad's a good guy, so I don't have to worry about it, but don't ever rely on a man. Don't ever... Always keep your foot in the door. Always keep a career going. Be financially independent. And so I see people now, like my most recent ex's kid's mom, just like living off the government and trying to suck him dry with child support. And I am the opposite. I probably should be getting alimony from my ex because I put him through school. I paid for everything when he went back to school forever. And then when I went to graduate school, I still insisted on paying for half of everything with my savings when he was making like 6 figures and I was making $14,000 a year as a TA because I'm that stupid that I just like had to feel like I wasn't relying on a man. And dang it, the guy's super freaking rich now, and I'm super poor. But I would hate myself. I would hate myself if I got a check from that guy. I would hate myself. I could never, ever do that. But anyway, getting off track here. So I remember during the divorce, the nicest thing that he said to me, because I was the one who actually left and moved out, but he never told me to stay. He never once said, I love you, let's work this out. The one thing he did say was, man, I really don't want to have to go through the inconvenience of dating again and then like having another wedding. What a pain. That was the nicest thing he said. That was probably the only thing that he ever said to me that indicated that he didn't want to get divorced. Was it would be a big pain in the ass for him to have to get married again and go through it all. Like, I thought I was done with that. How romantic, right? So like, I left because I didn't feel like he wanted me to stay and I didn't feel loved. But also, yeah, I had stuff going on back home. I had another life to go to. And I don't know, that had never presented itself, that opportunity before. Had my friend from high school not been going through a divorce, had I not found that peer group, would I still be in that marriage? Maybe, but I know I wouldn't be happy. So I'm glad that it all happened the way that it happened. And I took Roxy with me because he said, no, I don't care, it's your dog. Okay. And then I had some bad experiences when I started hanging out back in my hometown. Because like I said, some of those people were not great people. But I was very naive. I'd only ever been with like good guys before in long-term relationships. And I didn't know what kind of douchebags dudes could be. So I got played very heavily for a while there. I got cheated on and all that stuff. Then I ended up finding a guy that I dated for 3 years. This was someone my sister set me up with because we were out one night at a bar because I was going through that whole like acting like I was 21 when I was 27 because I'd never acted like I was 21 before. So I started going out all the time, doing all of that, catching up. A lot of my friends were younger. My sister was 2 years younger than me. And we were out and she sees this guy who's tall. She goes, hey, you're tall. You should meet my sister because I'm 5'11". Started talking to him. We dated for 3 years. Now, that relationship probably should have lasted 1 year, not 3. I would say for the first year or so, we got along. We did a lot of cool stuff together. We went on a road trip out to California, up the Pacific Coast Highway and back. Took a couple of vacations, did some nice stuff. I learned a little bit from him. I had always been a very stoic person, and he was very affectionate, so I think the best thing I could probably say about him in retrospect was that he taught me to be a more physically affectionate person, I guess. But other than that, we really didn't have anything in common. We did not like the same music. We did not have the same political, philosophical, religious viewpoints on things, and he was the kind of guy who liked to debate. He wanted to fight it out, and he couldn't stand it if you didn't agree with him. Like, he couldn't stand it if we didn't agree exactly on, like, something regarding religion or politics, and he was really into politics, and, I mean, if there's anything in the world that I do not want to talk about, it is politics. I believe what I believe. I hate debating it. I hate fighting about it. I hate talking about it. And he was a political science major. That's all he wanted to do. But what bothered me about it the most was that he couldn't accept it if I disagreed with him. He could not accept it. And so we ended up staying together, and I know it was for convenience. It was because we had all the same mutual friends. We had started hanging out at this one little crappy dive bar every weekend. We met these other people that hung out there a lot. We had this solidified little group of me and him, my sister and her boyfriend, that guy's roommate and his girlfriend, and then these other people that we met from hanging out there. And every time that me and this guy I was dating for 3 years broke up, which was a lot in the second 2 years, we would always just get back together because it was like this big social inconvenience for us not to be together. Who was going to hang out? Who was going to go to the bar that weekend? And we would just get back together. And it was stupid. I got about 1 good year out of that relationship, learned what I needed to learn, and then I needed to move on. But we kept breaking up, not finding other people, and getting back together. And I wasted some time there. I know that for the first year that I was with him, I would not move in with him because I was not ready. I was still going through the legal process of divorce. For me, I was okay having a boyfriend, but I was not okay living with someone. I needed to breathe. I couldn't take that step. But by the second couple of years that I was with that guy, I think I kept using that as an excuse as to why I didn't want to live with him. And I was still technically living at my parents', even though I was like sleeping at his place every night. But it was really just that I knew that he and I weren't going to work out. So, like, at one point, I brought some throw pillows over to his house, and then I, like, took him home because we got in a fight. And I was like, I'm not leaving anything here anymore. I always kind of knew it wasn't going to work. And I was so glad when he finally found someone else because, I mean, I was devastated at the time. 3 years later, while we were still dating, went on Christian Mingle and started talking to some other girl. and started dating her. And then he broke up with me. Christian mingle, where you're supposed to meet honest guys, but nope. And it's good because we didn't get along. And he was kind of like my ex-husband in some ways, in that he was cocky and he thought he knew better than everybody else about everything. And he was conservative and all this stuff. And he just wasn't kind. He wasn't kind. My ex-husband was even a little kinder than this guy. Neither one of them were kind souls, I didn't feel like. They had other good qualities that initially attracted me to them. But looking back, I don't know. I think I had the tendency to go for the guy who like was the big man on campus, the guy who was a leader type personality, the guy that walked into the room and everybody was happy to see them, the life of the party, that type of thing. But sometimes those people secretly are assholes. I don't know. But that was kind of the situation with those two. And so I found out this 3-year relationship ends. I knew logically in my brain that he wasn't great for me, but I had a complex over the fact that I was not going to be able to find anyone better, I thought, at the time. And so I was like super devastated that I found out he was already dating someone else. And I was very, very depressed. I lost a lot of weight. I lost like 20 pounds real quick because I wasn't eating, which is kind of great, but also, you know, not healthy, I guess. And I went online. I went on Match.com, which should be called Rebound.com, and you will hear me say that a lot because I tell you what, I did it. I can't blame anyone else for doing it, but in the time that I was online dating, which was the next 2 years, I met like 90% of the people at least that I talked to online had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, just gotten divorced, or were not even divorced yet, were just separated. I mean, those sites are flooded with that. People go through a breakup, they hop online the next day. And so it is rebound city. And what you have to be careful is that sometimes the people that are on there, they're not ready for a relationship. So if you're on there looking for a relationship, be careful because so many of those people are just looking for flings, or they're just looking for a rebound, or they think they want a relationship, but they actually aren't ready. And when things start to get serious, they freak out because they're not ready for that because they just went through a huge breakup. And that is what I ran into a few times. So then after this 3-year relationship ends, I'm single for 2 years. Technically single, but during that time there were a few little flings here and there. There were things that meant a lot to me, stories that I want to tell you guys on this channel, but I'll dedicate sole videos to them. One of the first guys that I met on there was going through a divorce from someone he was with for 11 years, and we had this whirlwind romance, and the whole thing blew up in my freaking face. I met some cool people on there, though. I met some friends. I met some douchebags. I definitely met some weird people. I have a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories from online dating. And then there were other times, like there was a guy that I dated for just 4 months, and he was really nice, but we never were like in a relationship. We just kind of like hung out every once in a while, and he was cool, and it felt like we had mutual respect for each other, but we both knew that we were passing time together, not like the one, and a whole bunch of weird stuff. I had like a pen pal that I met from Ohio that I got really close to, and then he friend zoned me. Just like so many stories that I want to tell you on this channel. But looking back, I mean, I'm glad I had that experience. It was the longest period of time in my life where I've ever been alone and single, and it was really hard. It was super tough, but it definitely, I mean, it's true what they say about like being alone for a while will help you find yourself and your own personality and everything, because that did happen. But it also was heart-wrenching at times. But I learned how to be alone and be okay with it too. It took a while. It almost took the whole 2 years. And then after 2 years of all kinds of stuff, I met Josh, the guy that I dated for a couple of years, who's been on my other channel occasionally. And he had 2 kids. And it was the first time I seriously dated someone with 2 kids, to the point of where I actually like met the kids, because I dated guys with kids before, but we'd never gotten to the point where I'd met the kids. So this was the first time that I was seriously dating someone with kids. And me personally, I never really thought I wanted kids, but I also never totally closed off that door either, but like was pretty sure I didn't. And it was, I have so much to say about that too. Like I just could do so many blogs just on what it's like to date someone else who has kids. And the whole, just, there were so many unexpected things that came up. You count on certain things when you're dating someone with kids. You count on the fact they're not going to have as much time for you, that the kids are always going to come first. If they need something, they're going to have to like run off and do that, that they're not going to have as much money. You count on a lot of that stuff, but there were so many things that I didn't even think about that came up. Like, what happens if you disagree about how he's parenting them? Like, let's say that he thinks that he should discipline them in a certain way and you completely disagree with that, but you can't say anything. You're not the parent. Just so many scenarios came up, and there were a lot of scenarios with his custody battle that was going on with their mom, and that whole thing was a huge mess too, and it kind of consumed our entire relationship. At one point, everything revolved around the custody battle. Everything ended up revolving around just that mess in lawyers and court, and I got so stressed out from fighting a battle that wasn't mine and it wasn't my creation that the relationship was just falling apart, and he was stressed out and we were stressed out, and we also have done the breaking up, getting back together thing so many times. Sometimes everyone says, oh, you know, you'll find the person as soon as you stop looking, or there is somebody out there for everybody. No, there's not. There's really not. Sometimes there's not. So, sometimes people are single forever, and maybe that's okay. You know, I was just talking to a friend last night, friend of mine from high school. He's married, has 2 kids, lives in another state, but he was Facebook messaging me, what's up, how you doing? And he was asking, like, how's dating going? And I was like, it's not. I'm not dating anyone. I have no new prospects. I'm not trying. And he's, oh, I'm sorry. That sucks. And I'm like, no, it doesn't suck. It's fine. Like, I don't want to be dating anyone right now. It's my choice not to be dating. It's actually kind of great to just kind of, like, breathe for a minute and not be worried about that. And he's like, oh, but still, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, really, like, stop saying you're sorry. Like, it's not a bad thing that I'm on my own. This is the life that I've chosen for myself right now. And if I want to start dating again, I will. And there's a lot still tied up with Josh, and there's a lot still going on with him. And I'm just in a really tough situation there. That's something I'll talk about in the future. This is a really long video already, but I told you it would be a not so brief history. But anyway, right now I am single. I live alone. I'm kind of seeing my ex sometimes. It's sort of a mess. I am basically a cat lady. I probably will be forever. I've come to terms with that. But I have a lot of good stories. I have a lot of good stories I want to tell you guys. I also have a lot of topics that I just kind of want to talk about. So thanks for watching if you watched this whole thing. And I'll probably in future videos reference back to this video for some background. So anyway, I got that out of the way. That's how I have ended up where I'm at least in terms of relationships. Stay tuned for more if you're interested in hearing more about this kind of stuff, and you can check out my other channel below. Subscribe, like. I'll see you guys later. Bye.